Hello everyone, it's your casual gamer Meep here and welcome back to the channel. Continuing the top 5 build series by request of Potato Nurse, the next killer in the series is the Artist. Like each video in the series, these builds are meant to take advantage of the Artist's various add-ons and will vary based on fun, effectiveness, and overall lore. If you enjoy the video, consider leaving a like as it helps promote the channel through YouTube, and consider subscribing for more content. Now, on to the builds. This first build is one that I'm sure at some point you've gone against as a survivor, and because of her power, the Diacrose, it's very effective. I call it the Flock and Block build. For this build, the add-ons don't particularly matter, but the Thick Tar and Festering Carrion are generally good ones to use. The Thick Tar increases the time it takes survivors to repel crows once they're swarmed. Meanwhile, the Festering Carrion reduces the cooldown after using Birds of Torment. The perks for this build are Agitation, Barbecue and Chili, Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, and Dead Man Switch. While this build may not help you out in the beginning with information or slowdown, once you down your first survivor, it's when the build starts gaining its momentum. When you pick up a survivor, Agitation increases your movement speed and tarries while we're carrying a survivor. This is here as a means to get to a Scourge Hook faster than we would normally. And because we're using Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, it spawns 4 Scourge Hooks into the trial, which have the effect that when we go to hook a survivor on one of the 4 Scourge Hooks, the generator with the most amount of progress on it instantly explodes and it loses 15% of its progress. When it does explode due to Pain Resonance, if any survivor is working on that generator, they're forced off of it and it becomes blocked with Dead Man Switch, which also activates when we hook a survivor as well. For the next 45 seconds while Dead Man Switch is active, if a survivor stops working on a generator before it's completed, that generator is automatically blocked by the entity for the remaining duration of Dead Man Switch. Meanwhile, the last perk of the build, Barbecue and Chili, also activates when we hook a survivor. Barbecue and Chili reveals any survivor's aura to us if they're more than 40 meters away from the hook for up to 4 seconds. Which is the important effect of the build, as the extra blood points are just a nice added extra bonus to it. With the Artist, you can capitalize on the aura reading effect of Barbecue and Chili, especially if the survivors are working on other generators, for instance. All you need to do is send one of your Diacrows at the generator, and if they let go of the generator, then Dead Man Switch will block the generator, and if they don't let go of it, then you can simply shoot another crow at it to deal a health stated damage and then force them off for Dead Man Switch value. Because of the Artist's ability to create map pressure with her crows, even while being on the other side of the map, it makes this build very effective and one of the more mainstream builds that you'll see on her. This next build is what I like to call Birds of a Feather, and it's targeted at punishing survivors for teaming up on objectives being generators in this case. The add-ons play into this idea as well, as the first add-on is the Severed Hands, which has the effect that whenever a survivor is swarmed, any other survivor that's in close proximity to them is also swarmed by crows, meaning they spread the pressure of needing to repel the crows or risk being taken down a health state. The other add-on is the Oh Grief, Oh Lover, which makes survivors exhausted while they're swarmed with crows as well. This is a great effect both in and out of chase, as it can deny exhaustion perks from being activated ahead of time, like Sprint Burst for instance, or Dead Hard if they're injured. The perks for this build include Discordance, Tinkerer, Merciless Storm, and Gearhead. Discordance highlights a generator in yellow when 2 or more survivors are working on it, and we receive a loud noise notification for it every 4 seconds while it's active. This is good to find survivors at the start of the trial and also during the game, and with the Severed Hands add-on, shooting a single crow at the generator will cause both survivors to be swarmed, wasting both of their time needing to repel the storm, or unless they risk being sniped with another crow and being damaged altogether. Meanwhile, Tinkerer is here to alert us when a generator reaches 75% completion. When this happens, you need to shoot a crow at the Tinkerer affected generator, and wait a little bit longer to when the generator reaches 90%, because when that happens, Merciless Storm activates. When Merciless Storm activates on a generator, you're presented with back-to-back skill checks, and if you miss one, the generator will block itself for up to 20 seconds. The generator will also block itself if a survivor lets go of the generator before it's completed while Merciless Storm is active. So if they're still swarmed by the first crow you sent when Tinkerer activated, you can interrupt Merciless Storm with a second crow to deal damage to the survivor and thus force them off. It's also a bit of a surprise factor to the survivors as well. Meanwhile, whenever a survivor is damaged by any means, including by a crow, it causes Gearhead to activate. When a survivor hits a good skill check on a generator, their aura is revealed to us for up to 10 seconds. So this is good at letting you know which generators are being worked on so you can send a crow their way, make them waste time repelling the crow, or make them vulnerable to being damaged with another crow. It's also a good way of keeping track of where survivors are at any given point in the trial. Overall, this build is just meant to punish survivors for grouping up together, while having various support elements such as the stealth from Tinkerer and the stealthy information from Gearhead. For build number 3, I call it the Sneak and Snipe build, and it features various information and stealth components to it. The first add-on is the Iridescent Feather, which decreases the number of Diacrows you can have at any given point in the game by 1, but it also gives you the undetectable status effect while you're out of crows while you're recovering them. By decreasing the amount of Diacrows you have, it also decreases the cooldown duration, which also decreases the time at which you can remain undetectable. So to offset that decreased cooldown, the second add-on, the Ink Egg, it gives you 1 more crow, but it decreases the time a crow can remain idle in the environment before disappearing. With these two add-ons, you can retain your normal 3 crows and the normal cooldown, which is about 12 seconds. So with these add-ons combined, you almost have an on-demand tinker-like effect, and it can be useful sneaking up on survivors and getting easier hits on them when they don't know you're coming after them, that is. The perks, meanwhile, aim to slow down the game while giving you information so you can go undetectable and make your way over to the survivors, and they are Hex Ruin, Surveillance, Call of Brine, and Trail of Torment. Hex Ruin has the simple effect that while it's active, anytime a survivor stops repairing a generator before it's completed, it starts regressing by 200% the normal rate. When a survivor does let go of a generator, we'll know when while Hex Ruin is active thanks to Surveillance, because Surveillance has the effect that it reveals the aura of regressing generators to us in a white aura. Additionally, if a survivor goes to touch a regressing generator, the aura changes to yellow for up to 16 seconds, which can be useful in keeping track of where survivors are at any given point, and knowing when and where to go undetectable to get closer to them. Meanwhile, if and when Hex Ruin does break, Call of Brine is here as his backup option. Call of Brine causes a generator to regress by 200% the normal rate for up to 16 seconds, but only after you manually break the generator, that is. Also, even though Call of Brine states that the generator is revealed to you in yellow whenever it's affected with Call of Brine, so long as it's regressing, the perk Surveillance supersedes it, and thus its aura will be revealed to you in white, so if anyone goes to touch it, then it will change back to yellow. So this way you can keep track of Call of Brine and how long it's active for, really on a generator. Meanwhile, Trail of Torment also activates after cooking a generator. You become undetectable until either that generator stops regressing, or you damage a survivor by any means. The generator is also highlighted in yellow to the survivors, so they're aware that you're going to be running this perk. So similar to Surveillance, you can use Trail of Torment for information, like if a generator has a lot of progress on it, and you leave the area, and it suddenly goes on cooldown, you know someone just touched it and is in that immediate area. And so with the add-ons, you can go back to the generator being undetectable, and sneak up to the survivor as well. With that being said though, this build does require more thoughtful decision making and how to use it, but it can be both effective and fun surprising oblivious survivors. This next build is a bit gimmicky and is meant to give the survivors various status effects based on their interaction with the artist and the environment around them. Status effects in this game are similar to illnesses that can be treated and cured, so I've appropriately named this build the Bird Flu build. The first add-on is the Untitled Agony add-on, and causes survivors to be hindered for a short period of time after being swarmed by the dire crows initially. Whereas the second add-on is the Garden of Rot, which causes survivors to become exposed for up to 4 seconds after they fully repel the crows off themselves. So far that's 2 status effects, but with the perks they also add more, and they are Fearmonger, Sloppy Butcher, Eruption, and Hex Plaything. The first perk of the build, Fearmonger, applies the Exhaustion and Blindness status effect to survivors who are working on generators, and the effects last for up to 5 seconds after they stop working on the generators. Meanwhile, Sloppy Butcher applies the Mangled and Hemorrhage status effect to survivors hit with a basic attack, which is more reliable than damaging survivors with the dire crows, that is. As for Eruption, it causes survivors to become incapacitated when a generator explodes, whenever a survivor is put into the dying state, if we've already kicked that generator, that is. And fun fact about Eruption is that it's currently the only perk in the game that can make a survivor incapacitated, which is interesting, and I just wanted to note that real quick. Meanwhile, Hex Plaything causes survivors to become cursed and oblivious after being hooked their first time, as Plaything turns a Dull Totem into a Hex Totem for that survivor to cleanse to remove their status effects. It also acts as a bit of a slowdown by being a secondary objective for the survivor, lest they be punished by not hearing our terror radius, and thus we can get an easy hit on them, hopefully. With this build, the survivors have to play around 9 different status effects in order to get out alive, lest the bird flu consumes them essentially. While this might not be the most effective build in terms of gameplay, it can be fun pretending to be a plague-like doctor in the form of a crow lady. As for the artist's lore-based build, Carmina Mora grew up suffering in an oppressive environment with her family in Chile. At a young age, Carmina's mother left the family one day, never to return. Her father, meanwhile, became neglectful towards her and her younger brother, Matthias. One day, when she was playing with Matthias outside, Carmina went indoors to answer the phone. Her father, being a neglectful parent, didn't watch Matthias, as he would wander into the creek next to their house and would ultimately drown. This would further divide her and her father's relationship, as he would blame her for the death of his only son. Carmina would live with the pain and misery that her family had forced upon her. The first perk in the build is Oppression. Kicking a generator causes 3 other random generators to start regressing as well. If a survivor is working on one of the 3 affected generators, they'll be presented with a difficult skill check. Stricken with guilt over the loss of Matthias, Carmina would try and commit suicide by jumping off a local bridge, knowing no one cared if she lived or died. As she looked down from the bridge and was about to let go, a swarm of crows had engulfed her surroundings. As if sent by an otherworldly being, the crows seemed to care for her, and since Matthias' death, Carmina no longer felt alone. That day, Carmina had been saved from her oppression thanks to the crows. The second perk in the build is Spies from the Shadow, as it is the only crow-related perk for killers. The crows found on each map act as your servants, and anytime a survivor disturbs one of them within 36 meters of your location, they give you a loud noise notification, with a 5-second cooldown between notifications. Given a new lease on life, Carmina began to manifest her experiences in life through her art. Over the years, her art began to increase in scale, creating large-scale murals and the subjects becoming more political. When she created art, it became a performance, so much it would launch the large-scale surrealist movement. One day, Carmina was commissioned an art piece via the VAC label group, a group she was familiar with, where art pieces would end up in political figures' possessions, and shortly afterwards, the artist who created the commission would disappear. Carmina decided to challenge the group by accepting the commission, but in doing so she placed a target on her back. After going into hiding with a few of her friends, she was ambushed one night. Her kidnapper would cut off her hands and cut out her tongue. Her fame and the VAC label group being starstruck by her led to Carmina's downfall ultimately. As Starstruck is the next perk, this perk activates whenever you go to pick up a survivor. All other survivors inside your terrarius suffer from the exposed status effect, and this effect persists for up to 30 seconds once you leave the terrarius or you're no longer carrying a survivor. Having had her limbs cut off, she let out a scream of pain, a scream of rage that she only did once before when Matthias died. Out of nowhere, she could hear the sounds of birds cawing. The crows that came to rescue her when she planned to commit suicide were once again coming to save her. They swarmed her kidnapper and began attacking, pecking with no stop in sight. Carmina was happy to see her abuser taken down and punished, but the crows didn't stop there. They turned their attention next to her friends who had been kidnapped with her. Unable to control the crows as they attacked her friends, she was filled with pain and guilt, just like when Matthias died. She thought it was her fault once again, and soon the bug of the entity finally took her at last. The last perk of the build is Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, as the pain felt by one resonates with others. Scourge Hook Pain Resonance spawns 4 Scourge Hooks into the trial. When a survivor is hooked on one of the 4 Scourge Hooks, the generator with the most amount of progress explodes and instantly regresses by 15%. Any survivor working on it whenever it activates will also scream and reveal their location to the killer as well. Normally after doing a killer's lore-based build, I would say something about them and how they've contributed to Dead by Daylight. However, because the artist is still relatively new to the game, I don't really know what to say about her, to be honest. She is probably the strongest anti-looping killer in the game, with her ability to shut down loops and pressure survivors across the entire map, which not that many killers are capable of. I think she offers the player rewarding gameplay and can be fun to play as, but at the same time she can be frustrating to go against. Let me know down in the comment section what you think about the artist. Do you like her, do you hate her, or do you even main the artist? You tell me down below. Also, if you have a killer that you'd like to see next in the series, comment down below as well. Right now the next video is going to be on either the Huntress or the Deathslinger by request of Tony48. Which one, you ask? You'll have to wait and find out, of course. Until then, I'm me+3, and I will see you next time. Goodbye for now.